Welcome, Ravens. I'm your host, Morrigan Raven, and you're listening to Raven's Ramblings. Episode 1, Fashion Distraction. Let me start this podcast with a question. Regardless of the size of your clothing, your height, your weight, or anything associated with that, do you have a part of your body that you don't like? And I mean really don't like. If you do, then believe me, you are not alone. We all do. I am plus size, more than a little overweight, which probably means there's a few bits on my body that I don't like. But if I had to choose just one thing about me that I really dislike, even borderline hate, damaged leg aside, it would have to be the tops of my arms. I have, for want of a better description, bingo wings, rather large, flabby arms that, despite diet and exercise, thus far in my life, have completely evaded decreasing by any vast amount. This makes clothes buying very awkward. As we know, and this is a topic for a future podcast, not all plus-size clothing brands get it right. We are not all perfect fits for our clothing size, and we do not gain or lose weight proportionately. But let's be real. If we all looked and weighed the same and all had the same body type and shape, well, life would be pretty boring, and we might as well all be androids. Not a topic for future podcast on this channel anyway. So what do we do when we have a part of our body that we don't like? Well, for most of us, and I include the men in this as well, we tend to just cover it up. Baggy clothing, longer clothing, oversized items, anything that basically hides us away from the world. But what if I told you I could give you some hints, tricks and tips that meant you could wear that dress you love regardless of the size you need to wear it in? Quick plug, listen to next month's podcast on how to feel great in your clothes regardless of your shape and size. But seriously, why should we hide? The quick answer is that we shouldn't, but it is in our nature. We are not creatures that bear all for everyone to see if we have anything less, in our eyes, than a perfect body. Well, newsflash, there is no such thing as a perfect body. I once saw a poster that stated every body is a beach body if you put a bikini on it. And I full-heartedly agree. There will be a podcast episode on that coming up too. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And here is why I believe in that statement, but based, until that podcast episode comes out, on everyday clothing. There are many ways to style and accessorize outfits, and that means you can make the most of the good parts of your body. And we're told this by most fashion-based people in our lives, celebrities, gurus, fashion houses, and their representatives. But how many of them tell you that there are also ways to disguise or detract from the parts of your body you don't like? That by accessorizing or styling an outfit in a certain way, you can literally wear anything you want. Okay, so maybe not those neon leg warmers from 1982, but pretty much anything else. Well, I'm happy to share with you what I've learnt and what I like to call fashion distraction. So what do I mean? Well, I don't mean putting on your favourite bodycon dress and then covering it up with a baggy cardigan, which you then spend the night constantly holding across the part of your tummy that you don't like, or, as in most cases, look in the mirror and straight away take the dress off and find something else to wear. I'm talking about using accessories and styling in such a way that you can wear that dress and take somebody's eye or gaze, yes, even your own, away from the bits you want to hide, even while still having them on display. So I hope you're sitting comfortably with a cup of tea, as I've got a few tips to give you. Fashion distraction is the art of pairing clothing, styling clothes, and accessorizing outfits to create the image you want to portray, not necessarily displaying the body you have. I know this sounds a little complicated, but I hope the tips that follow will make it all a little bit easier. I also like to call this perception deception, but it's a bit of a mouthful and harder to say, so I left it. But the principle is the same. No matter what part of your body you dislike, there is always a way to detract someone's attention from it and guide their gaze towards the parts of your body you do like. Well, at least the bits we have a little less hatred for. Think of it a little bit like using makeup to contour your face to hide a large nose, or highlighter on cheekbones to make them appear more pronounced. For this to work, we need to think of our clothes as makeup for the body. And remember, all the tips that follow can be used regardless of your age, gender, or even your fashion choices. So let's start with some of the obvious ones, which you may or may not already know. For example, if you are bigger in the chest or the hips, there are very easy ways with styling to make those areas look or appear smaller. This is with the use of colour or prints. And yes, I know this is coming from a goth whose wardrobe is 100% plain black. So this is not a technique that I can personally use, but it does work for most people. If you wish your top half to look smaller, wearing a darker colour on the top and a brighter or bold print on the bottom half of your outfit gives the illusion that your top half is smaller than it actually is. This works by drawing attention and other people's eyes by use of a print or colour away from those darker colours. You'd be surprised how much we ignore when it's in a darker colour. Must be why I seem invisible to most people, always dressed in black. But how many people do you notice going down the street when they're dressed in dark colours? Just think about it. Do you remember exactly what clothes they were wearing? I'm guessing probably not. But if a lady walking towards you in a crowd has a bright purple coat on, your eyes would automatically pick her out, and you'd be surprised how much you remember about her at a later point. Whether she had heels on or boots, whether she was wearing a brooch in her coat. And this is the same for distraction in clothing. Colour and print will detract from dark clothing. Why do you think eyewitnesses to crimes or events often only remember that someone was wearing dark clothing and not much more? And if you know me, you knew I'd go off on a tangent at some point and waffle a little. But if you don't, welcome to how my mind works. We're now talking about eyewitnesses and true crime, a little obsession of mine. But this is not what we're here to discuss. So let's get back to the fashion. Wearing a darker clothing on the areas of the body that you don't like is not the only way to detract from these areas of your body. So let's start at the top. Let's go with the top half of your body, the chest area, bust, bosom, whatever you would like to call it. If, like me, you always wear plain black, then prints and colours on the bottom half of an outfit is pretty much out of the question. So what else can you do? There are a few things I can recommend. Firstly, a big statement necklace that's detailed enough to draw the eye is always going to be your friend. This will take the eye from the chest area to the neckline. If you can make it a coloured piece of jewellery, maybe some big red crystals or some innate metalwork, just as an example, then you are definitely onto a winner. One thing I would be wary of, though, is the length of your necklace. Too short, and it won't give enough of a statement to detract. Too long, and you're drawing the eye down to the area you don't want it to see. Secondly, I would consider the neckline of the item you are wearing, whether that be a dress or a top. Wrap-style tops are designed to attract to the bust area, and if you're trying to hide that, it's probably not the thing for you. Maybe look more for a crew neck or something that's higher and rounded on the top edges. Some V-necks top can literally point to your bust, and like the wrap dress, exaggerate the area. So often opting for a softer round neck that doesn't show cleavage, if you're wanting to hide it a little, can often help with the aesthetic you're trying to give off. You can even go for a bardo or an off-the-shoulder style top. But if you are heading in that direction, I would make sure that the shoulder coverage, or the piece that goes around the top of your arm, is the same depth as your bust. A shorter strap style bardo top will make the bust look bigger, whereas a bardo top with a short sleeve, say to around the elbow, will actually detract from the size of the chest area. It's all about making those little illusions. So you can also use tops that are interesting. Play with mixed textures, especially you fellow goths out there. You know how we like the ruffles, the frills, and the lace. So think about how your top is interesting. Does it have lace applique? Does it have a lace insert? What makes it different from the rest of your outfit? Anything that makes a top more interesting to the naked eye is automatically more attractive and will therefore attract attention. What I would suggest, however, if you are larger in the bust than the bottom half, is that you avoid any type of belt that is designed to cinch you in, or that is a large contrast to the bottom half of outfit in any colour. Any belt that cinches you in below the bust and shrinks your waistline will automatically enhance your silhouette, but will also enhance the size of your bust. A cinch belt's uplifting effect brings the bust, well, let's admit it, front and centre. And if that's not the look you're trying to achieve, and you're wishing to hide this area, a cinch belt, I'm really sorry girls, is not for you. Instead, try opting for a belt that's maybe the same colour as the lower half of your outfit, if you've gone for a solid colour. If you're wearing a print, maybe coordinate one of those colours within that print. But make it on the thinner side and wear it as an accessory for fun and not because the outfit requires it. You can also combine these techniques. So if you were feeling a little insecure for an event and you wanted to hide the size of your bust, well, maybe pair a bright coloured skirt. Let's go with scarlet, with a plain black top, and let's get out that statement jewellery in those beautiful red crystals. And if you want, you could pop a little red belt round it as well. Maybe something shiny, give a little bit of glitz and glam. You could, in this instance, potentially have picked up two identical shoes, one in blue and one in purple, and honestly, nobody would even notice. But why wouldn't they notice? Well, because you've attracted their eyes to something else far more interesting: your necklace and your skirt. The skirt, or any form of pattern, will block the gaze of whoever is watching, and the statement jewellery attracts attention. Everything else is probably forgotten, so they wouldn't notice the shoes, even if they are odd colours. Oh, and I've not forgotten about any men that may be listening. For you guys, darker shirts or t-shirts with lighter jeans or trousers will work in the same way for you too. Just maybe try for a V-neck rather than a round neck on your t-shirts. But I would suggest that you stay away from jackets that are too cropped. Those bomber-style jackets, for example, they will cut you at the wrong place. Try going for a hip-length jacket that will slightly elongate the body and make your top half look a little more streamlined and therefore smaller. And the advantage of that is if you are trying to disguise a bigger bottom half, a hip-length jacket will also help to cover that up. Keeping the jacket darker and the trousers lighter makes this technique even better. And if you're a guy that likes all black, well, have you ever thought about wearing maybe a neckerchief or even a cravat? I know it sounds stupid, but it is stylish and it is interesting. And of course, there are always big statement chains and necklaces that you can wear to attract the eye. So be brave and be bold. This brings me on nicely to the disguising of hips or lower belly area. And again, probably the most obvious technique, you have already worked it out. Detract the eye to the top half of the body by accentuating the bust line and making it look bigger. So let's tackle the easiest one. Darker colours on the bottom half and bolder colours and prints on the top half have the opposite effect to what I've already been talking about. The bottom half retracts into the background and therefore looks smaller, whilst we're distracted by the colour and print in the foreground. But this isn't the only way. You can also take other principles from the detracting from the bust area and just reverse them. So to bring attention to the bust area, those wrap dresses and low V-shaped necklines, these suddenly become all the styles that you want to start looking at. Even if you like to wear all black, a wrap top or dress will attract the eye upwards to the exposed skin and down to the bust area, or completely away from the bottom half of your outfit. This will also work with a Bardot style top, but in this scenario, you want one that has the smaller shoulder straps. The more skin exposed, the less attention to your lower part of the body there will be. One-shouldered tops also work in the same way, as do any tops with unusual necklines. Anything to give the eye something to look at, or to put it another way, to confuse the eye line. If you can use a statement jewellery as well, then, big necklaces, even layering necklaces, then you are also disguising the lower half of your body because you are attracting to the top half. But there is another technique with statement jewellery that you can use when you're trying to detract from the lower half of your body. Big statement bracelets and bangles. When you're stood up straight and you rest your arms down by your sides, your wrists and hips are at roughly the same point on the body. So the bangles and the bracelets, especially in those big bold colours, or if you're a goth, ornate metalwork and big beautiful stones, they will detract from the hips. For those of you ladies out there that suffer like I do with what I like to call two bellies, when you have a protruding belly below your bust, then a waistline, and then another lower belly, and I know you girls are out there, then I have a little tip for you. When buying skirts, buy a longer length than you would normally wear, probably by a few inches. Then, when you wear the skirt, bring it up to the narrowest part of your body, which is normally just below the bust, known as the Empress line, works wonders. This works especially well with A-line and maxi skirts, even full circle skirts to an extent, because the fabric floats over the part of your belly that you want to ignore. It ignores that pesky indent as if it doesn't exist and hangs over the lower belly. The looser fitting the skirt is, or the less structured, let's say, the better it works. You are literally hiding and ignoring that second part of your lower body, and in turn accentuating the top half of your body as you are drawing the eye towards your narrowest section. If you are really good looking to enhance the chest area, then this is the time for those cinching belts. A good cinch belt will not only make your waist appear smaller, but if placed in just the right place, just under the bust line, again, kind of at that Empress line point of the outfit, it will act like a mini corset and push the bust line upwards. The trick to this is not to place it so low or have one so wide that it sits on the hips that you are trying to disguise, but that it is in the same colour as your skirt or trousers. This elongates the lower half of the body, and again, the darker colours make it recede, whilst the colour or the print on the top half will really pop and bring it to the foreground. Isn't perception a wonderful thing? And for you guys out there, an open-necked shirt with more than one button open will also have a similar effect. But you can also use a tie. If you can find one that's printed at the top and plain dark towards the bottom, this helps with attracting the eyes upwards and not downwards. In the same way, but be careful not to exaggerate the tummy area, printed and patterned shirts can be used. Shirts with a vertical stripe can be great for slimming, but those ones with the plain collars and plain cuffs really attract the eye, deflecting from the areas you want to hide and tricking them into looking at other focused areas is a great little tip. But like I said, some of these are pretty well known, and many fashion gurus will tell you similar things about colour blocking outfits. But what about the other parts of the body? How do I disguise my big arms, for example? Well, this isn't easy, but there are ways. When choosing tops, jackets and dresses, I look for items that, of course, accentuate other parts of my body, the bust or the legs. But I also look at the cut. Anything with a non-fitted or even floaty fabric sleeve that comes to the elbow, for me, is great. You would think this would emphasise the upper arm, but it's another perception deception. See what I did there? Because of how the sleeve is designed, if the top part of the arm is bigger than the forearm, no one will notice. I don't always stick to this styling tip, but when I do, I find it works well. Other things that I have found that work are sleeves that sit about 1.5 inches above the elbow and maybe have some form of frill or ruffle detail, whether that be at the edge of the sleeve or running down the sleeve. Again, the eye is attracted to the detail and not to the size of the arm. This is not to say I'm about to start parading round in sequins, but, a couple of ruffles or a nice bit of lace never did anyone any harm. Another technique I use is to look for 3/4 length sleeves. This isn't always the best way, but it does attract the eye to the bare arm as opposed to the fabric. Normally, in my case, the black fabric. Of course, the other technique I have is far more extreme, and that's to have the top of my arms tattooed. I mean, why waste all that space? And if people are going to stare, I might as well give them something pretty to look at. That's probably a bit extreme for some people. So look at your sleeve shapes and see what you can find that works for you. One question I was once asked during one of my plus-size clinics on Facebook that I never really got around to answering was around disguising a double chin. This is a really good question to think about. I suffer with what they term a dropped throat. This doesn't mean that my throat is in my belly, but what it means is that from the lower part of my neck to just under my chin, the neck kind of sits there. It doesn't go in and then follow the line of the jaw. And this is certainly another area of my body I don't particularly like. So how do I disguise and detract from this? Mainly I do this with the neckline of my top or a dress. A scooped or lower rounded neck will expose more skin and divert the eyes from the top of my neck. I do tend to avoid scarves and turtleneck tops. They attract the eye to the problem area rather than disguise it like you would think. Surprisingly, the best way to hide a double chin, sorry girls, it's show it. And I know it sounds daft, but there's two reasons for this. If you try to hide it with clothing, first off, it may look worse. You may get an overhang of skin on a turtleneck jumper, which detracts the eye as you speak or eat. This also happens with choker-style necklaces if they're too tight. Whereas exposing it by using some of the techniques I've talked about, using colour and statement jewellery to give the eyes something to look at, will eventually mean no one will notice. It sounds mad, and I know it does, but it's like anything in life that's not considered standard or, that setting on a hairdryer, normal. If you're exposed to something on a regular basis, the more you will normalise it in your head, and eventually you won't see it. Here's an example for you. I used to work with a girl who had one arm. It was a birth defect. She was missing her forearm. Within a few weeks of our friendship, in work and out of work, I honestly couldn't tell you if she was wearing her false arm or not. I was so used to seeing her that it just became normal. Other people would comment, "Oh, your friend with the one arm," and I'd struggle to think who they were talking about. And it's the same for a double chin. I think if I asked anyone I worked with if they knew the shape of my throat or my neck area, they'd probably say they'd never noticed. It's a scary tactic, but it does work. Obviously, if you're meeting someone for the first time, and maybe just the once, I'd go with the distraction technique as opposed to the exposure. But that's entirely up to you. So let's move back down the body. Let's talk trousers. Guys, this one kind of applies to you as well, so I hope you're listening, and if they're not, I'm hoping the ladies in your life are telling you. Trousers are possibly the hardest item of clothing to get right for any body shape. Unless you're 6'2" and a size 8, I really don't think that anyone has an easy time buying or fitting trousers to their body. And maybe if you are 6'2" and a size 8, you're also having problems maybe with length. There's always something with a pair of trousers. Why do you think no one can ever really find a good fit jean? But there are ways if you are trying to disguise maybe bigger thighs, for example, and there are some styles I can recommend. Firstly, for the women, you've probably been told that to balance out bigger thighs, you need to wear bootcut trousers. Honestly, you have no idea the hatred I have, not only for that statement, but also bootcut trousers. I will admit they have their place, but I do not believe they balance a leg, and there are so many better options out there. If you do have bigger thighs, you probably feel that trousers are a nightmare to buy anyway. I know I do. And yeah, you'd be right. Most women would agree. But the right pair of trousers can look great. But the statement about balance regarding bootcut trousers, well, I think it's incorrect. And the reason why I don't feel bootcut is the right way forward is because they tend to accentuate the narrowest part of the leg. But we have other options, as with all things fashion related. There is, of course, as with the upper arm scenario, the trousers for the ladies that are designed to be oversized, such as palazzo pants. Please forgive me if I have pronounced that incorrectly. And you can even look at long culottes, because the widening throughout the leg in the design of the trouser automatically makes the thigh area look smaller and therefore the leg look more proportioned. The issue with these types of trousers, if you are petite in stature, and I'm saying kind of under 5'6", then these styles of trousers can often swamp you and bring around a whole new set of issues. In this case, I would suggest cropped culottes, the ones that sit just above the ankle, and those paired with a calf-height boot in the same colour will elongate the leg. You can even use the straight-cut trouser style. Straight-leg trousers are exactly as they describe, the same width at the top of the leg as they are at the bottom. However, they do not always fit those of us with bigger thighs. The struggle is genuine when trying to find trousers that really do fit and look good. But all is not lost. Although before I move on, for you guys out there, straight cut trousers work to help balance out the thigh area. But my next tip works for you as well as for the ladies. My best tip for hiding thicker thighs, other than skirts, kilts and dresses, is 3/4 length coats and jackets. The length that they sit tends to streamline your look and bring the eye to the narrowing of the leg, not the widest part. So if you're looking for something that sits around 2 to 6 inches above your knee, again in a brighter colour, paired with a darker trouser, this will help as well. But if, like me, you prefer your black outfits, I would recommend aiming for the longer length jacket rather than a shorter length. And don't worry, even if you're on the short side, a longer length jacket will not make you look smaller unless it's too big. Just remember to wear it with a heel to give the impression of length and height. This works really, really well if you coordinate your shoes and boots with the colour on the bottom half. Even if that means black skirt, black tights and black shoes, honestly, it works. Guys, this works for you too. Coordinated trousers and shoes will trick the eye into thinking that your legs are longer. And of course, there's nothing wrong with a little heel or a thicker sole on your boots for you to get that extra height and lift. So that's all I have for now. I really hope that these tips have helped in some way. And of course, they are just my thoughts and ideas, things that I've learned, I will admit, mainly by observing other people and in my head subtly adjusting their outfits over the years. But some of it is from trial and error. I can't force you to take on any of these things, but I hope that some of it sounds sensible and maybe one day you'll just give it a go, even if it's just one thing. Remember that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so 9 times out of 10, what we see and criticise about ourselves, others don't even notice. I think we all just need to be a little kinder to ourselves. Every one of us is different, all of us unique, and each of us, at least once in our lives, has probably, well, let's just say up to 10 times in our lives, struggled with our body image. So let's make 2021 the year we start to love ourselves just that little bit more. Thank you for listening. I'm going to sign off now and leave you with this. No matter what you do in life, just do you. You've been listening to Raven's Ramblings, hosted by Morrigan Raven. For more information and links to my other social media sites, please visit Anchor FM. Thank you.